Hey, this is Max. I am back with another CSR2 video. This time it's the CX-75. This is a Jaguar milestone car that I got quite a few seasons ago. Someone on my channel asked me about this car, whether I know of any tunes and setups to use this car more effectively in live. Well, as a matter of fact, this car down tunes quite nicely and can in fact be pretty easily used to control the racing and live lobby while you're trading. Now, the thing about this car is that it is a little bit hard to hit dyno when you have it at max evo. So in this case, max evo gives me a 10.032 at 1405 evo points. And this is done without maxing out the car. I have 33 out of 42, 70 out of 128. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that I actually found I didn't have fusions for some parts. I didn't bother to upgrade them further. Not to say I can't. In fact, I'm waiting on delivery at this point. The other issue was I was running out of money earlier in last two seasons because of all the PC cars. So I didn't make this car priority. But bottom line is, without even building it all the way to stage 5, but I do have two stage 6. I get a nitrous and a tire. You can have this car set up to do pretty well, okay, with no stage 6. Now, that makes it a little bit weaker on the Evo, and the nitrous is always a big thing with these kind of cars. But let's see, without a huge amount of nitrous available to you, duration-wise, you're certainly going to have a weaker overall car. But it does not mean that it's going to run poorly. It just is not as strong as it otherwise could be. Okay, so you have 10.7 at 241. A little bit of less grip doesn't really help that much. So this is the max evo tune, so 10.7. Obviously, if you're going to go for some kind of down tune, it probably wouldn't be doing as well. Now, this kind of a slowdown where the evo just kind of drops a bit to 10.8 against a 10.7, this is not a true down tune. So if you do it this way, what you did is you put 6th gear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th gear, and replaced it with 6th gear, right? That does a little bit of a dyno drop, but the reality is that's not a truly recognized down tune by the computer. So you're actually going to most likely run slower. What happens is that you probably can run it pretty well still, okay? But that 1/10 difference in the dyno may not be all that helpful to you, because you may still end up running it slightly slower than even that dyno time, which makes you pretty much stuck with losing in live, right? So that kind of a point-by-point evo drop that you see here like this, that doesn't really help you that much. Okay, so at what point are we really getting a recognized down tune? Well, from the computer side, it has to be a point where the drop is because of grip and is significant. So right now, I still have 5 here. I'm going to put it to 0. Only bumped it down a few points. So we have to keep going until it gets to that cliff drop point. Now, there's a disadvantage to getting to that point, and I'll explain that in a second, because right there. All right, so this gives you an actual dyno beating situation where you're now at 11.5 versus 1 point higher, which is 10.9. So you have about a 5/10 margin, but with this car, you don't get the full 5/10. You get about a 3/10 margin. So my 11.5, if I drive it correctly, should give me about a 11.1 to 11.2. Maybe a 10.9, but I really doubt it. Okay, so perfect launch gets you a 0 RPM drop, which means you're only going to run pretty much dyno at best, maybe even slower, much slower. Not good. Okay, so you know you can't launch it perfect. So how do you launch it? Well, you can launch it late, or you can launch it early. I find early to run a little better than late. The wheel spin actually hurts you. So how do you launch early? Well, you let go a little bit earlier, like that. Now you're running it a little bit early. You're not getting wheel spin, and it kind of comes out of the hole pretty well. And what that does is gives you your good run beating your 11.5 with the 11.025. Now that is quite good. Now you're about almost 5/10 faster. What about a late launch? Well, it works as well, but you got to be careful. Sometimes second gear will hang with wheel spin, and that'll screw you up. So can you launch a little bit late? Yes. Okay, you launch late. You have to write out first gear when you do that, because if you're still in the middle wheel spin and you shift to second, you're going to get aggressive wheel spin, and it basically kills your run. So this is a late launch run, and it comes out a little bit slower, almost a wash. So with this car, you can launch early, you can launch late. The only downside to this is at 843 Evo points, you may not get maximum RP when you go to live. So that extra few upgrades that can bump you over 1,000 is really important to have. So let me put my nitrous back in. And what that does is you'll see all these fusions adding a nice chunk of points. Now, the tune doesn't really change that much, other than the dyno itself does change automatically to a more aggressive duration for the nitrous. Okay, let's see if this is the best. Okay, so now it's at 1,059, 10.927. But what if we bump it up? When you bump it up, it's 10.3. So you're doing from 10.9 to a 10.3. That's a big jump. Okay, you're not going to get a 10.34. You probably get a 10.4 something, 10.5 something, but that's still a 5/10 jump, 4/10 jump. That's more than enough to beat most opponents in live. So again, this is not a bad car once you have that setup. It seems to like relatively near perfect shifts or perfect shifts in the higher gears, and it'll do just fine running through. So I get a 10.456. Mind you, dyno is 10.948, and 1 point over, your theoretical change would have been a 10.371. So it's not that bad. It's about a tenth off when you have it down tuned and running it. There's nothing to complain about. So that is the way this car is set up to down tune. Now, obviously, with nitrous and without nitrous is a big difference. Okay, so still 4/10 capability to beat the and here's your 0 RPM launch, and this you're going to see the big difference in time. It's going to be a lot slower than dyno. Not terribly slower, but definitely slower. Okay, so that means you're likely to lose when you get that. So obviously you can't launch perfect. Your goal is to launch 500 RPMs early or 500 RPMs late. So what I'm saying is that you want to launch either at 5,000 or 4,800, or you want to launch at 6,000 or 6,100. Either way is fine, but just don't launch at super high RPMs, because sometimes the second gear will hang and the wheel spin actually costs you time. So with a 7,000 RPM launch, you only manage a 10.53 versus a 10.47. So 557 doesn't matter. I mean, it's still beating your dyno by almost 4/10. So you still should be fine, but I'm just saying that it is not as good potentially as you can get with running your car with the 6,000 RPM launch, but that's very hard to do too. Okay, so here's a 4,000 RPM launch. Again, dyno beating. And this will run pretty well. That's 10.467. So early it seems to run better than later. Earlier is trickier in live. I'll show you how I do it. Because when you do a live launch, you have that launch button to worry about. So you have to time it carefully, right? So the way I do it in launch, launching it in live is, what I do is I let go of the gas at 2 and then hit go, or the go button, when the needle sweeps right past perfect. Now, first things first, I got to find somebody who I can actually connect with, because this has been really bad since 2 updates ago, I would say. Last update didn't fix it, and this new update certainly didn't help. The issue is either people time out without anything popping up, or alternatively, you challenge them and nothing happens, or you challenge them and it says opponent disconnected. So once you know he's not counting down, you can try challenging the other guy back. Sometimes one side can connect and the other can't. Most of the time, if you've already seen this issue, you and the other guy probably has just enough device differences that you'll never connect. So you might as well move on to someone else. When you challenge it, it doesn't give you an option for the other guy to accept. It'll count to 7. You get a chance to leave. So this has been the ongoing issues I've been facing in live, making it very frustrating and quite frankly no fun to even come into live to try to get races done. When you're part of a milestone crew, you have certain obligations to make certain amount of RP points, and inability to connect to other players is a real big problem. This one's not going to work either. When it counts to 7, I'll jump out. 10, 9, 8, 7. Goodbye. Okay, so that's 3 tries of 3 different people. None of them can connect to me, and that means I need to try to find another lobby. Whether the computer will, whether the computer will give me another lobby is a whole different question, because sometimes you get locked in like I am now. I'm stuck in this lobby. See, it's not moving me out of this thing. Let's give this guy a try. And that sucks. When you're stuck, you keep coming back into the same lobby and you can't connect with anybody in it. Then you have to retune your car to try to get out of this lobby. What I'm going to have to do is bump that a few points, enough to hopefully get me into a different lobby time bracket. Okay. Well, actually, that time I think I moved to a different lobby. Let me jump back in one more time. No, I didn't. I'm back in the same lobby. Jesus. Okay. Whew. I was going to demonstrate how to launch in live, but looks like I'm just demonstrating to you how bad the connections are in live right now. All right, let's do this. That gives you slightly, let me bump it down a little bit. Give it into the, let me try to move it into the 11-second range and hopefully get into a different lobby. So by bumping it down to 11s, I may be put into a different bracket, which will mean different opponents. Or I don't, and I'm still stuck in this one. So this is probably the 11.3 to 10.9 range lobby anyway. And again, can't connect. All right, enough. That's not going to happen. All right, so I can't connect, so I can't really demonstrate what I'm hoping to demonstrate, but I can assure you that you can hit the same times that I'm trying to show you in the live lobby as you can do in dynoing. You just have to figure out exactly how to launch the car off of perfect. Again, when the lobby is being stubborn like this, it is very difficult to do anything. It's just not much. You know what? I'll put it to 2.0, which will put me down to a 11.2 bracket. I'll give it one more try. I really want to at least show one launch in live. This time I should definitely be in a different lobby. Okay. All right, so let's pick somebody, anybody. Now, I find that it doesn't really matter who you challenge. It just, if it's not going to happen, it just doesn't happen. Um, and it's not happening. Oh, well, I'm sorry. You are not allowed to connect. That is why it's almost pointless to try to live race with some of these devices. Now, mind you, BlueStacks uses an emulated uh, Droid Android. I think it's on Nougat or it's on the latest Oreo, but it's simulated, and I suspect some of the issues that are coming along with all this connection is because of, not because of this particular emulator, but rather the uh, version of Android that you have, because a new phone with the advanced Android also doesn't connect. And one of my older phones seems to connect okay, and I think that's still running an older version of Android on it. So there you have it. All right, so it's not happening tonight. I wish I could show you a live launch, but the game is saying no. And this kind of brings forth the current most glaring issue with the game, which is live racing. Uh, Natural Motion does not seem to be paying any attention, or they could not do anything to fix it. This actually have gotten, in my opinion, a little worse with this new update than even before this update, because prior to this, I was still able to live race with about, I would say, 50% to 40% of the players in the lobby. Right now, I'm looking at a disconnect or unable to connect rate of almost 90%. And that is very difficult for someone who's trying to make points to deal with. Fortunately, of course, this particular account that I'm looking at isn't currently in a milestone crew, so it really doesn't matter. But I hope that Natural Motion will fix this soon, because this is a very big problem for players who are trying to make points and get more milestone cars. Well, again, Dyno beating Tune, quite possible with this car. It's a good car, and if you have it set up right, it can do quite a bit of damage in live. And if you have parts, I mean, the problem too is, of course, this is not a car you can easily get fusions for. You just have to wait and hope they come along. Well, that was kind of a long video, mostly because I wasted so much time trying to get a live race in that wasn't happening. I hope, in any case, that the way to beat Dyno with this car was made obvious to you, and you can certainly ask me questions about it. I like this car. I wish I had more parts for it. I would certainly be using it far more often in live if I had more S6 or even more fusions. But as it sits now, because it's a high evo car, it's a good car. And that, again, is kind of what you have to do to evaluate whether to build this car and whether you would plan to tune it to use for live racing. Well, that concludes this particular video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. This way you can get notifications when I do new videos. And as always, thank you for watching.